What is up, ladies and gentlemen? You are listening to the Rebels by Design Wrestling Podcast. I am your host, Dynamite Recliner 83, and you are listening to episode number 21. And on this episode, we're going to discuss the John Cena and now his official retirement, as his retirement match did take place as of this recording last night. So I've been reading the comments all morning about the different reactions to the show and everything else, and we're just going to discuss everything and anything about John Cena on this episode. It's kind of almost a tribute to his career and my own personal thoughts and opinions about the final match at the end of an era of an incredible career. So we're going to start things off about the match itself, okay, and the last night's show overall. To start things off, then we'll go into talk about my favorite moments throughout his career and things of that nature. Okay, so that's how we're going to do this. So there's a lot of backlash that I'm seeing about how the ending of the match went, how the match itself went, how the show overall went, and the backlash was more directly towards Triple H over anybody else. Which, here's my thoughts and opinions. To me, the match ended in a way that I kind of halfway expected. Because Gunther made that promise that he was going to make John Cena tap out. John Cena's entire career, he talked about never giving up. And it was kind of a fitting way that on his final match that he actually gave up, because in the story of the entire thing was, that makes sense. A lot of sense to me was that John Cena said he was always going to keep fighting and always going to keep fighting until his body has nothing left. And the way the match ended, which was Cena kept trying to fight out that sleeper hold, that rear naked choke submission several times, and he keeps getting locked back into it. So he kept fighting, and finally his body pretty much said he gave up, and he kind of knew it, and he's tapped out. While a lot of people out there have a major problem with that, a lot of people want to compare it to the Sting retirement, how Cena should have gone over, how it should have ended a different way, blah, blah, blah. In a storytelling standpoint, it makes the most sense that it ended the way it did. Agree or disagree with me or not, that's up to you. But that's just exactly how I feel about it. That it made the most sense that the match ended the way it did, knowing that Cena's on his way out, and that when you listen to the things that he said over the last year plus, ever since he announced his retirement, and even before that when he talked about he was going to keep going until he can't go no more. And when he announced his retirement tour, that's exactly what he was talking about, was that this is all he's going to give, whatever he has left in this tour, because he knew that his time was up. No pun intended to his theme music, but that's what it was. Gunther getting a lot of heat on this match too. They have police escort him out of the building and everything. So hopefully, if Dirty books is right, it does transition into a ton of heel heat for Gunther and making him a monster heel. So, and there is a path that I'm seeing now that could be developing that could really help put Gunther extremely over in the long run as your top monster heel. Because he's already retired Goldberg. Now he retired John Cena. We know AJ Styles is supposedly retiring in 2026. There are rumors of retirement tours for Brock Lesnar in 2026, as well as Chris Jericho. If those happen, and then they have Gunther retire all these people, that is mega heat. That is mega heat for Gunther to establish himself as a dominant top heel. And if they do it correctly, it could be a big thing for Gunther. And I know there's a lot of people out there who don't like Gunther because he's not your traditional sports entertainer, that he's more of a pure professional wrestler, man, technician. I have zero problem with him. I enjoy him in the ring because he is a great in-ring storyteller and a great worker in a match. And people are losing that art of what storytelling means inside the ring. John Cena tapping out is a prime example of what is the lost art of storytelling in the ring amongst the fans themselves. It's always been there, but fans forget about what in-ring storytelling means and what, it's all about the expressions. It's all about the emotions and stuff they're doing and how they sell a move as they do them. The in-ring psychology, logic, and well as the in-ring storytelling is very, a lot of the generation of fans now is a missed thing that they don't understand, that they think everything that in regards to storytelling has to be done on a promo segment, a video package, and everything beyond what goes on in the ring. And I talked about that thing in podcast episodes in the past, so I'm not going to go into too much detail, but for me, the match was fine. And the fact that the live crowd don't agree with it, the fact that a lot of people in the last, overnight, I should say, since we're not at the 24-hour point of since the match happened yet. We are the next morning as or afternoon as I record this episode. But saying that, I'm going on and I've seen all the different comments, and you really see the different people understanding it and getting it compared to people who really don't understand and get it. Because it has always been common labeled the time-honored tradition that if you're somebody on the way out of the company or on the way out of the retirement completely, that you're supposed to put over somebody on the way out the door. Now, there's always going to be some very few exceptions to that rule, but an example is Sting, but Sting is a different scenario. And people are, some people say, oh, he should have put somebody over. Sting's entire run in AEW for the span of time he did have his run in AEW, his entire run in AEW was basically to help put over Darby Allin, who was pretty much an unknown guy until he got to AEW. Now Darby Allin is one of the future stars of AEW when he's healthy and when he's around. So Sting did his job of putting Darby Allin over. And the vast majority of the time that Sting was wrestling, it was people that didn't need the rub, for the most part. There were a few small cases of not that he could have went the other way. Yes. I'm not saying it was perfect either. But Sting, but to AEW's credit, the Sting retirement part of things was handled extremely well because Sting wrestled tag matches. He didn't beat anybody in a singles match. He didn't win a singles title at all. He wasn't in championship pictures until the very end, where he got the tag title, which was kind of a deserving thank you Sting moment. It was handled very, very well. I admit to that. Now, not every retirement situation is ever going to be that way. But the time-honored tradition has always been to put over somebody on the way out the door. And that's what Cena did. That's what we thought Flair was doing when he retired in WrestleMania 24. That's what Goldberg was doing. He kind of pitched, kind of complained about it afterwards. And the list goes on. A lot of people who has gone out in that way. But to me, it's like, okay, Cena went out the way it made sense if you really truly understand what was going on. And I get it, emotions running high in the spirit of the moment of the entire situation, and it can be different. Now, down the line, you may think a little different. Who knows? But that's just how I view it as a viewer. That I understand it, and I'm always, being somebody who's been watching wrestling for a very long time, I understand it, in a way. Maybe not. Maybe it wasn't perfectly booked. Maybe it was. Um, there were things about it that I could say it should have been done better. Whether or not why Randy Orton wasn't even there, questionable, questionable. I knew that where he was, but in this situation with one of your top rivals that's still part of your company, I expected Randy Orton to make an appearance. And when you look at who Cena faced in the retirement run, I also kind of expected them to have a match with CM Punk in a singles match, which never happened either. Um, but when you have Randy Orton, who is a part of the class that came through the OVW at the same time as Cena did, there's that special bond that you would expect everybody to have some kind of appearance in the video package or whatnot. We even got Brock Lesnar to help us thank you Cena sign or whatever it was. No, it was I see you. That's what is. See, now I remember it. But that was the only thing I kind of questioned. But and who else was appearing there, and who else didn't appear, and all those things. That was the most noticeable one. Was that there was no Randy Orton. Now I know where he was. He supposedly doing something in Saudi Arabia, helping promoting WWE, I'm sure, and whatnot. Because I think Omos was also there. It is what it is. But you think that they could have at least some kind of video thank you recording, at least. That's the only kind of my that's probably the biggest gripe I have on about the entire show is the lack of Randy Orton, who was one of John Cena's top big rivals. Besides, that was available. And now I understand, and a lot of people were talking about Edge, Adam Copeland, which I did not expect because he's got an AEW contract, and WWE has been on record by Tony Khan himself that he was never contacted about Adam Copeland being a part of the retirement tour, and etc. Which that's we all in the WWE management side of things, which is not a big surprise to me since they are, hell bent on trying to counter program and hurt AEW. So they're not going to make any kind of attempt to try to work with them. So I get it on that aspect. But to me, I understand the whole scenario that why I get why some people are angry, but you gotta kind of look at it as a viewer as a professional wrestling tradition that where the story makes sense. You may not like it, but at this point, it is what it is. It's over. Now being able to sit back and reflect on the entire retirement tour as a whole, it could have been a lot better, and it should have been a lot better. Now, a lot of the blame does go to Triple H on how was it put together. Now, I don't know the behind the scenes story, but I know he's the head of creative, so you kind of have to focus the blame on him. How much of a say does John Cena actually have? I don't really know the answer to that. I'm not there. I can only speculate at this point. And while all the biggest part issue was, had WWE allowed be what John Cena originally thought what his plan was, that he's going to be full time for the entire year. Meaning he's wrestling he's there every single week and so forth. That would be a huge difference maker as far as being able to get the heel run over and work. Now, I posted a bigger blame on why the heel run itself failed more on The Rock and Travis Scott in that part, because that was supposed to be a mega part of the situation. And the fact that Travis Scott had a fall with the company, The Rock chose to not be a part of WrestleMania, and go out there and claim that his part was done when it really wasn't. That screwed over the heel run so bad in the storyline that they started and decided, you know what, we're not going to go that way. We're going to not finish what we started and just have Cena act like a heel without, the parties involved not being there. That was, I blame The Rock more than anybody else on that situation. And relying on a Travis Scott, who is not a wrestler, and being a very mediocre WrestleMania because of the lack of those two things not working out. So Cena's last title, winning number 17, should have been a bigger thing than it was. But to more fault of other people to other parties and other than Cena and somewhat Triple H as well. Triple H always was able to work with what he got when the Rock and Travis Scott thing fell apart in the process of the whole thing. So I am willing to give that part a pass. And it ended the way it should have, of John Cena being bad, but it did end the way that it should have been, where John Cena, walked out as a babyface. One of the top biggest baby faces in the history of WWE. Makes sense that it ended that way. Now, if John Cena was a full time, was there every single week, all these things would have worked a lot better. We know that. And that part is on the WWE that to say, no, we don't need you for X amount of dates. That part it is what it is at this point, because it's all history now, because it's over. We're now reflecting on the run as it's concluded. Now, I don't think we're going to see this as the last we're going to see of Cena in WWE. We are going to probably see him come out, cut a promo, or do whatever non-wrestling roles that a lot of these legends do now. Because he did sign up a new contract of being an ambassador, which is not a shock to me. Everybody's talking about, oh, he might go to AEW, he might do this and that. He's never going to go to AEW. You're insane to think that ever was even a remote option. Just, I don't. I never thought that for a minute. And I'm an AEW. I watch AEW. I'm a fan. But even I know that was never going to be a thing. Never. Because John Cena is one of the biggest WWE loyalists, no matter what, and everybody who knows him, and follows his career, knows that. And there's certain guys on the WWE roster that can never see him make that jump. He was one of those guys. So with that being said, okay. So my opinion on the whole situation is what it is. What it is. My biggest thing I hope for is that they truly capitalize on the mega heel heat that Gunther currently has, and to me, the most logical thing that should happen that Gunther, gets another title run. And they really booked that next title run very well, which they have kind of had an issue with the last couple title runs that Gunther has had, that they weren't, once he got the belt, they didn't know what to do with him. There are a lot of flaws in the WWE creative process. I will say that, and I admit to that. And if you don't agree with that, then and there are a lot of people who are who I've dealt with on social media who are so pro WWE that they cannot do no wrong. Which to me, the last year of WWE to me has been one of the more weakerly creative years in WWE history. Now, before you all can come after me about their TV ratings are being this and the attendance is this and that, they're selling tickets, blah blah blah. How could I say that? Just because you're selling tickets and all that at a higher price doesn't automatically make everything picture perfectly good. It's okay to have criticism on what you're watching and where you're spending your time and money on to see, and call out the flaws that they are definitely there. The live audience reaction to John Cena's final match is a testament to that because they did not leave that arena crowd to go home happy. There were a lot of angry people in that, so that kind of it's a testament on did you do the match the correct way? It's a question, but to me, I see it one way, and I understand it. Could have been a better situation where they done a Steve Austin Bret Hart scenario at WrestleMania 13, where instead of Cena actually tapping out, that he passes out. I understand that logic, and I would think that would be also a great idea as well. It's another way of doing it. Yes. Uh, and they could have gone that direction, I think, and it probably would have got a better reaction compared to what we actually got. Um, but it is what it is. The overall show, I would say, the match itself was good for what it was. Um, the other matches on Saturday Night Main Event was what it was. It was watchable, enjoyable. Not too fan of like the quick run in of Oba Femi and Cody Rhodes ended too soon to me, but I understand it kept Oba Femi looking strong without taking any kind of losses, and it also obviously advances a feud with Drew and Cody. The women's match was a way to showcase because the whole point of the undercard was to showcase a lot of these younger next generation guys of NXT. And in the tag title match, a member of TNA. Um, but now with going through the last, looking at it, now let's go forward to a more positive side of the John Cena era. It's crazy to think that in WWE world that we are at the end of an era, and that by the end of 2026 that we could be very potentially be at the last of the generation of the ruthless aggressive generation. The group of men and women that were brought up in ruthless aggression to the main roster from OVW. We're talking about John Cena, Randy Orton, Brock Lesnar, Batista. Shelton Benjamin was part of that class, and and to think that we're looking at that class and to think that under the Dirty brand, there's only two left, Brock and Randy, and that there's a lot of speculation that Brock is going to be done by the end of the year. To see that young class come in back in 2002, and looking now that they're all about ready to retire or close to their retirement age, it is a very surreal, crazy thing to think about. And being somebody who lived through all these men's entire runs, you know, and looking and being able to reflect on the entire run of these guys, it's crazy to me to think that they're all done. You know, especially when you see guys who were part of the last generation, like the Hardys, still going. uh, it's another crazy part about it too. Um, and so going back to John Cena and just remembering all the things that he did, I had my ups and downs as far as how I felt about John Cena over the years. I wasn't a big guy. When he was on SmackDown as um, just remember him kind of showing up to confront Kurt Angle to do the whole ruthless aggression promo, start things off. Heck, playing W2K23, which was like the John Cena showcase, kind of brought back a lot of the memories of the moments that he was involved in. And I look at it and I go, you know, I used to love John Cena when he was doing the basic Thuganomics gimmick when he was the rapper. I love that. I love that era of John Cena. And then it kind of went to the more PG white meat baby face of the company, white meat baby face, where that was when during the time where that really kind of turned away from John Cena. Because obviously he was truly meant for the kids in the PG era that they're trying to get, that they were pushing it very hard on. I understood that part, but for an adult, it didn't connect with me as a person. Um, and that's more on the marketability and the machine of WWE more than John Cena himself or anything else. Because the adults were looking for something different. It's why during that time they also kind of gravitated towards other people, such as your CM Punks and so forth. And that's why you got a lot of Let's Go Cena, Cena sucks conversations at every single show during that PG era. Because the kids loved them, the adults hated them. That's kind of what the world was at the time. And I remember being in the exact middle of all that. But, to sit there and go, so there was times where John Cena was not one of my favorites. He still wasn't, he still isn't one of my, you know, absolute favorites of all time. Um, but I can respect what he has accomplished. I can respect what he's done, and I would be the one to admit that, yeah, he irritated me at times. So it's not all direct hate in my part because while I'm not the guy who owns John Cena T-shirts and merchandise and things of that nature. I wasn't that guy. I can respect what he has done and that that and respect that he was there for a certain reason. I will admit to that. Now, what are some of my favorite John Cena matches? I always loved everything he did with Edge. He and Edge had great chemistry. I enjoyed so anything that the two of them were going at it became a favorite of mine. Obviously it was Unforgiven. '06, '07, '07 was the ladder match, the TLC match that the two of them had together. That's probably the match that stood out to me the most. I had to think about what year it was because then I remembered, okay, that match happened after Lita was gone. That's kind of how I determined what year it was. I'm pretty sure it was '07, Unforgiven. The Lita was no longer there. Uh, and I remember, yeah, she left in November of '06, so that's kind of where I had to think about it for a second. Um, that TLC match was probably the favorite match I had of the two. Um, but they always had great chemistry of them. Obviously, I love to mention with Shawn Michaels. Uh, the hour long match they had in the UK was a amazing match that stood out and really showed that Cena could do an hour match. It kind of and worked, and the show also showed how incredible Shawn Michaels was at the same time. And it was coming after the WrestleMania match that they had that year, WrestleMania 23. Which was another great match overall. Um, the stuff with Triple H was always been pretty good. Um, he had good stuff with Randy Orton, even though that was one of those rivalries that I got bored of because they did it so much and it went so long. And so by the time they had that unification match, the ladder match that was sparking that also involved at the same time was also where the Yes move was really developing. Um, by the time that unification match that they were having, and the live crowd was crapping all over because they were kind of pretty much feeling the same way I was, where they just got tired and bored of Randy Orton versus John Cena. They wanted something different, and I understood that because they have fought so many other times at every major event that you could think of. At that point, so it was like none of it was new, refreshing, and it was kind of like we kind of knew what we were going to get in those matches because we've seen everything that they could possibly do to one another at that point. So that part I got, and for me it was kind of one of those things where like you got bored of it, of the same people fighting each other all the time. Uh, so like when he was going to the field with Rusev and Bray Wyatt, some of these guys that these younger talent that he kind of fought before during the end of his full time run, Roman Reigns before he became Tribal Chief Roman. There were times in there I was like, I felt the matches were good, but at the same time, I felt like somebody else should have won that because he was at that point where he should have started, putting over to that generation then because he was, on his way out to becoming part time as it was. I think it would have been a bigger benefit for Rusev and Bray Wyatt to have gotten those victories and or at least won the feud than it was for John Cena to win again. And we all reflect back that this should have happened, that should have happened. Same with the Wade Barrett and the Nexus. It was another scenario where you looked at it and go, that should have been winning for Nexus to help put those guys over a little bit. But this is all in just on a reflect basis. But like all those things that are it is what it is, can't be changed. Um, there are moments of John Cena was very good with promos. He was very good, even though during the PG era he really didn't have a character. He was just the guy in George wearing different color shirts every single month. It felt like, but like, and it was like there really was not a character anymore. It was just John Cena being John Cena. But even then, he was still one of the best workers in the game. And to this day, I still say he has to be um, easily in the top 10 of all time promo cutters. I definitely put him up there on that list. I really would have to think about how they all rank, but I know for sure he's in the top 10. Maybe higher, if I thought about it more. But that's a whole different topic, and maybe another episode altogether of a podcast down the line. But right now we're strictly talking about John Cena. So John, because it's one of those things where like you know when you think about the stuff he's done, who he fought, the who's who of wrestling that was in that time frame. Um, it's crazy to think that we never really get the true match between Undertaker and John Cena and Deadman Undertaker. And by the time we did, we got the squash, which still was kind of strange to me because um, Undertaker wanted to come back and have a great match, try to capitulate the end his career on a high note because he was so unhappy with the stuff with Roman the year prior. And I get that part. Of course, there was some kind of dirty rib that we didn't know until later, which that's what it is. That's Vince McMahon for you. You can say that as well. Um, but it's one of those things where like by that time we got to that point, it's like that could have been so much more, and I don't know the fan in me was expecting more or wanted more. But it's all hindsight at this point. But I really did want to see more Undertaker John Cena matches overall, especially during the Dead Man version of the Undertaker, and see how that would have worked out overall. Um, Now the story though, I can tell you, I've got to see a more version of that. This was 06, 07. It was at a Raw slash. No, it was a. I think it was just a Raw for whatever reason. So it was so I get to see Deadman take over to Cena in that time frame. It was a post Raw dark match. As everyone knows, back in the day, they used to have a post non televised main event for just the send the crowd home happy match. Um, they did a lot of these things back in those days. Um, so Raw, and this was a fun experience that I witnessed in person because I've heard about the match was going to take place. So I wasn't like in a hurry to get out of that arena because when Raw went up the air, everybody kind of was beelining towards the exits, and I waited. Me and my brother waited. I'm like, there's still supposed to be something else coming on, and you notice, and we're kind of noticing that Cena wasn't leaving the ring either. And the coolest experience was when the Undertaker gong or bell tolled, and lights went out. All you saw was a massive shadow of people going running back to their seats because the Undertaker's music started to play. And everybody who was going towards the exit, turned around, went back to their seats, like, oh shit, the Undertaker's coming out. What the hell? To me, that's still one of my favorite moments going to a show live because the unexpected moments that happened. And I tried to tell people around me, like, there's supposed to be an Undertaker match after the show. Nobody really truly, I think, believed me until that bell hit and like, oh shit, he was right, kind of thing. Because I tried to tell people that were sitting next to me, that, hey, you don't get something here. And they used to do this a lot. They don't do this more anymore now, I don't think. But back in those times, there was always dark match main events just for the fans that went to the show. Um, Obviously, they didn't really do it during like the double taping when they did Raw and SmackDown, which is you know um, something that I've been to a few of those, or it was ECW and SmackDown. They were taping they taped SmackDown and did ECW live on and stuff like that. Um, But it was kind of funny to see all that happen. Um, that's kind of one of my personal favorite moments as in, as a live uh moment is of thing I've seen live and it happened in front of me in St. Louis. Um, there was a so the other feud I always liked with John Cena was also with the stuff he did with Batista. Uh, I always thought that was kind of underrated at times. Um, Even though it was kind of cartoon being a part of the PG era again, the equipment was kind of a silly way they did to do things. Um, Batista at the time was entertaining though, as far as mic work goes, but there were other things that was kind of like okay, that was strange as well. But it is what it was. A lot of people talk about how this Gunther win they don't mean a ton because how many matches John Cena lost before he had this last title run, and I get it. I mean, um, losing to Solo Sikoa at that time that he lost and didn't do a whole lot with Solo for a while. It took a long time for it to actually do anything beyond that. After they, put him over majorly, uh, you know, Austin Theory gained nothing from the victory. That it was almost a forgotten match in a total. And John Cena, kind of called it when he in the promo itself. When you think about it, too, that it was a no-win situation for him because nobody, like, you can beat me and nobody's gonna remember it. I can beat you and I gain nothing. And how true that was because a lot of it had to do because after Cena lost to Austin Theory, we had the changing of the guard where Vince was out, Triple H was in, and Austin Theory's push just kind of went away. Um, for whatever the reason was, which I still don't really get it because I thought Austin Theory had a lot of potential. He's very young at the time. He's in his early mid 20s. Um, Showed he had a lot of ability, that he can work the mic. Like, all the potentials were all there. It's just they decided they halted the push right away and just for whatever reason. And instead of like, truly capitalizing and continuing to build him up, they have cash in money to bank on a U.S. title instead of going after a world title because at that time neither one of the champions were actually going to put anybody over. Or well, no, excuse me. At the time, it was just only Roman Reigns, and that Roman Reigns was not going to lose that title to anybody at that point. Cause we've seen how long after that time was until Roman actually did take the L and lose that title. It was, keep in mind it was about what, still kind of early in the second year maybe of the title run. This was actually happening. Um, the bottom line is like obviously it didn't happen. He went to catch it on the U.S. title instead because the world heavyweight title wasn't brought back yet. It's, kind of tell you like where we were in what part of what time frame we're looking at here. So like when people really truly could have benefited from a victory over John Cena, there was such a hard ceiling of how far you can go because of Roman had the handcuffs on the one and only championship because they already had unified it. Brock wasn't going to do the job either. when they're still were separated. You got to remember that part as well. It was kind of like, well, it's just you kind of got stuck in a rock between a rock and a hard place at that moment because it was booked into that corner. If that makes sense. Um, but it is crazy to me that the John Cena era is over. That um, a lot of people were expecting that everything was going to happen. John Cena was going to come back. There was a storyline that's going to make it happen. Blah blah blah. I don't know how anymore because they set up on the way it was. He walked out, said goodbye. There was no anything else that to be said from that. Not even a goodbye speech, which not everybody gets to do that on retirement, but I kind of expect to see him maybe say something or be advertised for tomorrow's Raw and go, yeah, cut a promo then, like Shawn Michaels did or Flair did, that kind of scenario. That may have been a thing, but obviously, they counted that down that this was the last appearance. They had a whole countdown that this is, you know, you know, this is where we're at. So, with that being said, I'm just going to wrap things up and say, you know what? Thank you, Cena. You gave us a lot of years of entertainment. You touched millions of people all over the world, especially the kids. All adore you. You did so much for the Make a Wish Foundation and make a lot of kids happy. Um, uh, Gave us wrestling fans a lot of crazy moments. And with that being said, it's kind of a thank you, Cena, and hope you enjoy your retirement. With that being said, this is wrapped up for episode number 21 of the Rebel by Design Wrestling Podcast. Stay tuned. I have a couple more episodes I wanted to I'm working on. Hopefully to be more consistent with new episodes coming up in 2026. Until then, everybody, have a great rest of the week, time. Hope you all enjoyed this episode and have a great week, month, or whenever I talk to you again.